What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Success Playbook Live. I am your host, Corey Hasting. We'll be coming to you live every other Tuesday night in March from 7 to 8 p.m. directly on this channel. If you are new here tonight, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and thank you so much for being here. Tonight is episode 8, which is kind of crazy to even think about, but every week this show is about real conversations around business, mindset, leadership, and what it actually takes to build something meaningful. Tonight will be 60 minutes filled with practical insight from real experience and live Q&A in the chat, so please go ahead and type your questions up so we can get to as much as possible over the next 60 minutes. If you're getting real value from these conversations, please make sure you like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in because we have so much more content coming to you directly on this channel. For those of you guys joining for the first time, I appreciate joining tonight. Like I said, my name is Corey Hasting. I am a real estate broker and owner of Christie's International Real Estate here in the Northeast Florida. And over the last several years, I've built and led our luxury real estate brokerage, and this platform is just an extension of that, focusing on helping others, really leading through successes, but also learning from my mistakes. Whether it's a business-related question, real estate, personal growth, or career overall, I want to help you any way possible to get as successful as fast as possible for whatever we can do tonight. So let's go ahead and get started as we always do. I want to know where you guys are tuning in from, what city and what state. I always love seeing these each and every week on the chat to see where you guys are watching from. I am coming to you live from Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as I always do, here in our Christie's International Real Estate headquarters. And I know there's been a lot of questions. We obviously were off last week. There's been a lot of questions about the podcast with my brother, the singer-songwriter Scotty Hasting, and I have some fantastic news. We are going to be going live with that podcast directly on this channel Thursday around 6 p.m., and I just watched the final clip of it today. It is awesome. There's so many good insights from him, not only telling his story about how he went from being shot 10 times in Afghanistan to being during COVID and learning guitar on YouTube to now a singer-songwriter that's signed with a label in Nashville, and just kind of his rise to fame, but also, as you can imagine, the demons that he's faced, right? And the mindset he's had to have. And so very, very excited for that. I can't wait to bring that to you guys. But let's go ahead and get started as we always do with some big questions coming up in the chat directly. First one's off. We'll go ahead and kick it off. Do you believe the resume is dead? If not, how often do you believe leaders should update their resume? It's a good question. I mean, obviously, I think if you're somebody who's pretty secure in your job, and obviously if you aren't really looking to go anywhere else, I think you probably don't need to update it as often. But at the same exact time, you want to update it enough to where you're not forgetting about maybe some significant milestones that you've had in your career. So I would say, every 3 to 4 months, it's probably pretty good to go through and just kind of reiterate and make sure that everything is up to speed. And maybe you won an award at work, or maybe you got a new classification of some type or whatever else. Those things are really important. And so I would continuously, go through, and I would kind of make sure that you're watching that as we go through. Love Ponte Vedra Beach in the chat. Love Nashville, Jacksonville, Cincinnati. As always, great to have you guys on here. But that was a great first question. Next question, how do you build trust quickly with new teams? Yeah, that's important, right? I can do it from two different instances here. I think if you are a new manager coming in with kind of an existing team underneath of you, I think it's all about, trust. And I think it's all about how you're going to treat them coming in, right? If you come in kind of like stern and this is my way or the highway and whatever else, you obviously could rub some different feathers there. But I think you have to go in with the intention that you're going to be learning from them in a way. Because if you're new to the job and they've been there a few years, my guess is they probably know what's going on a little bit better than you do right at this point in time, right? So you have to go in with an open mindset. You have to go in with your ears open, not always your mouth open, which is sometimes what bad leadership will do. But really go in and hear from them, right? What did you like? What management style do you appreciate? What's the things that you do here? Kind of really get to know them as your team. I think people, I talk about all the time on this channel, like people really want to know how much you care about them before they're just going to, follow you or believe you, right? So if you're coming into a new team and you're the manager, I think that's really important. Now, At the same exact time, if you're coming onto a new team and maybe you're at the bottom of the totem pole or whatever else, I think the way you earn trust is by work ethic, right? Showing up on time, staying late, making sure that all of your work is done when it should be done, asking for help, asking for questions of clarifications on this or versus that, like being able to be infused with that team, excuse me, will really, really help you obviously build trust, but also really make sure that they can rely on you, right? That's a huge thing as well. But good question. Next question is, when do you first realize leadership was more about influence than authority? Well, I think naturally people want to follow people they look up to, right? I mean, I think in some way, shape, or form in leadership, people want to see what they're drawn to in either the life that they want to live or maybe the job that they want or maybe just the motivation that they want, right? And so I think, with that, you have to understand that is all about influence. Authority isn't always leadership style because authority sometimes is like, my way or the highway, or this is wrong or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong. In leadership, you have to have authority because you have to make sure that what the goal of the company is going to be, we're all in unison here. We all have it in line, and we're making sure that everything that we're doing goes along with what the company goals are. But at the same time, I think leadership at the core of it is all going to be about influence, right? Because people want to follow what they want to have, all those. We talk about all the time, like, people want to buy people before they buy product any day of the week, right? That is all influence. And it's not always authority. So if you are somebody who's in upper management, if you are a manager, or if you are somebody that kind of goes through that, really lead by influence, showing them how to do it because you've done it before, walking through those different obstacles they're facing because you've faced them before. That's all influence. That's all what that is, because you're influencing their decisions based off your past decisions. Or maybe same exact time, maybe influence them in a way where hey, don't do this because I've made that mistake before, right? Which we've all been there. So that's good. But I will say tonight we have a ton of writing questions, which has been amazing. I know we didn't get too many of them. Obviously, 2 weeks ago we were on here, so I kept a few. But I have some really good ones, so I'm going to come back to the chat in just a second. These are ones that either came in from email, DMs, comments on our YouTube channel, whatever else. But it's a great first question, kind of going into that last one we just had. What makes someone a great leader versus just a boss? And I love this question because obviously I get this question quite often. Obviously a boss is somebody who is just above you in the pay grade, right? Yes, we've all probably had bad bosses before. We've probably all had good bosses before, whatever else. But if someone is describing them as a boss, like, hey, that's my boss, like more than likely there's probably not that much either respect there or whatever else. But if somebody regards them as, hey, that's a great leader right there, like that means they look up to you. Like we just talked about influence. We just talked about following in your footsteps. And I think the difference for me for a great leader to a boss is somebody who, just like I just said before, who listens, can understand, and then articulate the vision that they want to go back. But also, like, my thing is a great leader can motivate people so many different ways. A great leader is going to listen to them and say, hey, I understand what you're saying when you want to talk about career growth. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put you on this growth track. That's really going to motivate you, hopefully. That's going to be able to grow your business that way, right? So I think that's a really good two-prong. I think if you are somebody who's in management, don't always become the boss, right? Which is we have to in life, yes. But also at the same exact time, really focus on like what a great leader that you would want to have, right? So keep that in mind. But that's a really good question here. One more write-in before we get back to the chat. How do you build a team that actually believes in the mission? This is a good one, right? Because everybody has different motivations, right? Some people are just coming to punch a paycheck. Some people obviously truly care about the company. Some people want to grow. Some people want to do all these things. But I think if it's about the mission, number one, they have to understand what the mission is, right? And that's echoed down from leadership. That's echoed down from the top of, hey guys, here's our mission statement. Here's what we want to go and accomplish. Here's our goals this year. But also, I think it comes back to the character and the culture of the organization. Because if you have great character and you have great culture of leadership, then the mission should be very fluid, right? We should all understand what we're working towards. We should all understand what exactly, like why we're all working hard at this. And so I think for me, I think we have to understand that, if you're building a team, you want them to understand what the vision is. You want them to understand why the vision is so important to everybody that's here, how they're also a part of that vision, because that's also really important, right? We want fulfillment in life. We all do, right? And we all want to feel included. We all want to feel welcome. We all want to feel, a part of something special. And that is getting everybody on the team or everybody in the company to understand we need all of us, right? If we're going to go and we're going to accomplish this $1 billion goal, ironically, this is a great question because I actually had our March sales meeting as an organization this morning. And, we've had a fantastic start to the year. I mean, greatest January ever, greatest February ever. And in the almost 9 years we've been open, and it looks on paper like a really, really great start to the year, right? Which I wanted them all to know that, because that's imperative for me to know what we're accomplishing right now at this point in time. But also I reiterated to them how important this start is to accomplishing our biggest goal, which is the $1 billion, right? And I've told you guys that in the past. I've told you guys that on multiple different channels here. That is our goal, and that will be our goal until obviously we hit it, right? And so I wanted them to understand, based off of where you guys are at here 67 days into 2026, we're on pace, right? Let's all continue to keep this momentum. Let's all continue to reiterate what we're doing and why we're doing these things. And it went great. And obviously I want them to be, as impactful on that as possible, as influenced on that as possible, because without my agents, there is no goal, right? There is no mission. And so I have to continue to reiterate to them that this is a us goal. We are all working to them. So that's a really good point from there. Back to the chat. Great question. I think the segue to, I noticed that you've had your best 2 months ever as a brokerage. What do you think you've done differently that has impacted the growth so far? Really good question. I mean, I think it's probably 2 or 3 different prong here. Number one is obviously switching over to Christie's International Real Estate from Engel & Volkers has helped tremendously. We've recruited great talent. We've had great people come on board over the last, really even as 2 weeks ago, but really the last 60, 90, 120 days, we've really added great talent to our roster. And, on top of that, it's a better market, right? I mean, a better market this year than it's probably been in the last couple of years, especially January and February and getting into March. And all of that plays a factor. Obviously interest rates over the last couple of weeks have been 3-year lows. Now they've gone up a little bit, obviously with the war in Iran and things like that, and we'll watch how that goes. But the market is just better. Right. And also, I think there's a lot of buying power out there. People are coming back into the real estate market, understanding, it's not going to be all doom and gloom. 26 does project to be a great year. And so I think if you add all of that in, especially with obviously, our great shop staff, support staff, broker team, with coaching and accountability, and we're really trying to elevate everybody's game. I think if you add all that up, it comes to what we've had so far this year, and that's a fantastic start. March looks great on paper. Now, we all know we have to obviously get to the closing table and do all those things, but, we're projected to be at about a 248 million in production by the end of this month, which would be insane because that puts us right on track to hit the $1 billion number, where we have to do almost 250 million each quarter. Now, every year, first quarter is always the slowest year. We know that, right? But it's been a great run, so it's been really exciting to see. So we'll see. But great question there. How do you identify leadership potential in others beyond experience and readiness on paper? Well, I don't think you can. I think if you're looking to truly evaluate leadership, I think you have to look beyond the resume. I think you have to look beyond, anything you can see on a computer screen. Now, you can obviously look and see, were they in did they play college sports? Have they had a leadership role in the past? Were they a team captain? There's obviously things on paper that can make you kind of outlook, or have they taken leadership classes or summits, or do they have designations about leadership, or whatever it could be. Obviously, those things on paper you can see and you can say, oh, this person has the criteria to be a good leader. But I don't think you can tell someone if they're a good leader or not until really you get to know them, right? You talk to them, you sit down with them, you ask them a couple questions, you talk to them about their past, you talk about this, and that, and you kind of get to know them on a personal level. Other than that, I don't really know how you can tell, right? And, I joke all the time because, we're in the process of hiring right now for an admin. Anyone can lie to anyone for an hour, right? If you're only sitting down with that person for one time in that one section and in that one role, it's hard to really tell what somebody's true character is. And I think that's really important as we go forward and we're looking at hiring somebody with a great leadership style. I think everything really comes down to what do they like whenever the lights are off, or, when the doors are closed? What do they like in a meeting room and things kind of get a little bit tense? What type of leader are they becoming? Now, there's all types of DISC tests you can have. There's personality tests you can have to really figure out what type of leadership they want to be, both when they're stressed and when they're not stressed and everything else in between. But I think it's a really good question. And I think really, I think it comes down to you as the person who's asking those questions to ask the right questions so you can get to know those people. But really good question. And, thank you guys so much for being in the chat. Continue to write questions in there. I'd love to get to as many as possible today. Also, if you're a little bit late to the stream, I would love to know where you're tapping in from, where you're watching from your city and your state. And I want to go back to a few other ones who have been mailed in or emailed in for us. It's what's the best way to earn respect as a leader? This is a good one. And I definitely wanted to get to this tonight because for me, everybody, some people get jobs in leadership for their ego, right? We've all had that boss. We've all had that, and that for me is the worst way you can really do it. If you're doing the job ego driven, then people are going to see it through it and they're not really going to respect it, whatever else. I think the best way to earn respect as a leader is your team has to know you care. That is something I will always, always talk about. I will always, always reiterate. People want to know how much you care about them before they're going to ever follow you or trust you or whatever it could be. And I think that goes into a lot of things in life, but definitely business, because if you're truly trying to earn the respect of people you work with, you have to show up and be accountable. You have to admit when you're wrong, right? You can't make the same mistakes, over and over and over again. And people want to know that you care. You're there for good intentions. And I think that is really important when we talk about what leadership looks like, but also just a great organizational chart, right? You want people who want to earn the respect, right? If people come in and they're naturally just, nose in the air and better than everybody else or whatever else, that people will see right through that. And so really good question there. But I think if you're really looking to earn respect as a leader, people got to know you care about them. People want to be able to listen or know that you're going to listen, not just talk over them. People know that you're going to have their back whenever things kind of get a little bit tough. And also they want to know that you're going to be there with them in the foxhole when things don't go always perfect. But that's a really good question that we wrote in here. Back to the chat. How much trust do you put into those leadership tests you mentioned? Well, it just depends. So I have really enjoyed the DISC test, D-I-S-C. It's not necessarily a leadership style test, but it's a personality test. And it'll tell you the type of personality that you are, not only like whenever you're just kind of hanging out and normally, but also whenever you get stressed, which most of the times whenever we need to be a leader, we need to go out and put cause a solution or whatever else, it's usually those stressful moments, right? So the DISC test is, you can find it online. You can Google it. It's great for any type. I would strongly urge you that if you're in leadership and you have a small team, have all of your team members do the DISC test, because you're going to then be able to understand what really makes them tick, what absolutely doesn't make them tick, right? That's also very important. But also for you, you're going to be able to know what you are, right? And what threats do you have based off your personality when somebody says, this to you or that to you or whatever else, right? I think when most people think of the DISC test, they think of the high D, right? That's the overbearing person, right? But honestly, a lot of leaders have a form of the D in them, but not always in a way that maybe this disc test is going to tell them it is, right? Or maybe the perception of it, right? Because a high D is somebody who's very decisive and be able to make decisions, which is a great leader, right? I mean, people are looking to you to right the ship, make decisive decisions, and then trust that you have their best interest in it. So, I mean, I think if you're in leadership, I would strongly urge you to take the test. If you have a small team around you, I would strongly urge you to have them take the test just so that you can see how everybody reacts differently to things. But that's a really, really great question, though, as we go forward from here. Back into some of these that I've been sending in. What is more important early on, brand or revenue? That's a good one. And I saw this question come in. I've put a lot of thought behind it because I think, brand is obviously important because you're differentiating yourself on why people are coming to you, what your clients getting from you, right? But also revenue, we all need, right? We're not working for free. But at the same time, you have to build a brand long enough and early enough on to where your customer base is going to be there for the long term. So short answer, I would say early on, your brand is more important than the revenue. And if you're doing things right, then your brand should naturally turn into your revenue maker, right? Because you have the clients coming back, you have people buying product from you, you have either online or whatever type of brand that you're promoting or that you're owning. But at the same time, if you're so focused on revenue and creating dollars and cents and this and that, you're really going to miss out on the relationship aspect of what building a brand is. And it's the clients, it's the people who are coming to you to buy a product or whatever it could be. And, at some point in time, people will pay for higher end brands, right? If they really think that it's significant, if they really feel that, hey, this is a great product. I mean, look at Louis Vuitton, look at Gucci, look at all these other big name brands. We all pay couple $1,000 for a purse, which we can go buy a cheaper one somewhere else, but yet we want the brand, right? Same thing for cars, Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, all these big brands, people are going to pay more for because they want the brand. That's what you have to build as a young entrepreneur is you have to go in and you have to really build the brand that you want to have because it's all about the clients at that point in time. And you have to make sure that the clients feel that, right? Which is really, really important from there. Back into the chat here. Pittsburgh here. Thanks for watching in. You've been successful with your social media presence. When you first started with social media, did you have a strategy or just experimenting until what worked? Excuse me. I had a strategy for sure. Short answer would be strategy, right? But at the same time, you have to be seen as much as possible. So like my strategy with social media is I want to be super professional, right? I want people to see what I want them to see, right? I want to be held to a higher standard of how I view myself and how I'm seen. Obviously, I work for a very luxury brand. I represent a lot of people that work underneath me or for me or whatever. So I always have to keep that in the back of my mind of whatever I'm posting, does it negatively influence or affect anyone possibly inside my circle? Yes or no, right? So if the answer is ever yes, then you shouldn't post it, right? I think where some people in business go wrong is they use social media sometimes as like a sounding board, especially when the political time comes around or whatever. At the end of the day, my philosophy has always been, if you're not getting paid to talk politics, if you're not getting paid to talk sports, if you're not getting paid to talk about whatever you're talking about, then you probably shouldn't talk about it on a public forum because once you push send and once you put it out there to the world, it's out there and you never know what somebody else is going to do or see. Next thing you know, it could negatively influence someone that works for you or whatever else. Just never a good thing to have. But if you are new to business or you're new to building a brand or you're new to whatever it could be, definitely have to have a social media presence. And I would strongly urge you to think about if you were the consumer, what would I want to see? If you were the consumer, what would you want to be influenced by, right? Because that's obviously what social media is about. And also, what is the brand perception that you're trying to build? Because that's also really important. Because, if you're trying to build a super high quality, insurance agency, but yet you always post things that don't really make things seem quality, or maybe you're anti legislation or whatever, people are going to be like, well, I don't really know if these are the people I want to work with, right? So your perception is your reality when it comes to social media. So definitely have to have that there. Good question though. Was there a specific post or moment where things really took off? Not necessarily, because for me, the real estate industry is there's no get rich quick scheme, right? You got to put the work in. And in the brokerage game, so the real estate game is a 30, 60, 90-day cycle, right? But the brokerage game is more quarterly cycle, because even when you bring a top agent on, it's going to take them 60-ish days to start closing business with you, right? So the whole pipeline for the brokerage game is completely different than a normal sales job or a normal agent job or whatever else. So yes, we want to get as much top talent as possible, right, over to our company as fast as possible. But we also understand that these people have lives. These people have, a little bit of exposure whenever they're leaving their current company to come to ours. And there's also going to be some expense whenever we bring them on, for sales signs, business cards, whatever it could be. So we just want to be able to funnel as much as possible, but it creates this kind of lag time where if I bring a top agent on, I'm really not making money on them for 60 to 90 days, best case scenario. So I wouldn't really say that it was, any type of moment where things took off, but I will tell you, in 2022, we recruited over $420 million of prior production in a single year. We broke the Engel & Volker's recruiting record in North America, and that was a great year. We had some really, really great top talent come on. And that was something that really took us off. I mean, that was a great, great year. We also opened multiple shops that year, and it was just a great year when we kind of came into fruition. But even with that 400 plus million that we brought on, we really didn't start to feel the effects of it until the prior year of 2023. So hope that answers your question from there. Next question, how do you decide what content to create? I think it all depends on who your clientele is, right? So if I owned an insurance agency, right, and my social media was geared towards everything but insurance, I would probably say you're missing the boat, right? Because your people who are following you more than likely want to be up to date with insurance, either from different laws passing or what makes your insurance firm different than others, from different value propositions or client testimonials or different carriers that now you're carrying that no one else does, or maybe awards you've won. I think where businesses use social media the right way is it's just a way for the business to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm telling you who I am, and I'm going to authenticate what I'm telling you through my posts. It's just a validation tool. That's really what social media is. Now, the good companies will start to prospect new business off of their social media. And that's where you really start to get all the gears moving together at once, because now it's a validation tool and now it's becoming a lead generation tool. So that's all about branded content. That's all about get to know the team. That's all about testimonials. That's all about successes. That's all about every single thing you can think of that a new client looking at your Facebook page, Instagram page, TikTok, whatever it could be, LinkedIn, is going to look and say, these guys know what they're doing. He's my friend, and I saw that he posted this insurance agency because he was validating it. Same exact thing in whatever product you're selling. So let's say that I sell t-shirts, right? And my social media is flooded with my t-shirts and maybe a famous person or maybe friends or whoever it could be wearing those, right? And then those people are sharing those posts. And now you kind of create this organic web where now you're accessing other people's networks just by a social media post, which, mind you guys, is all free. And there's so many things you can do as well with like branded content and promotional ads and SEO. We could talk a full hour about content creation and just going down the rabbit hole of what makes sense and so on and so forth. But that's a good question. Back to the chat. What tips would you have for an entrepreneur who is looking to grow their social media outreach or just start in general? Number one, start. Because you have to start somewhere. Now, what I would tell you is I would probably get somebody who understands social media. So what I mean by that is, if I'm an insurance, let's use insurance. We would keep using it. I'm sorry, but we keep using it. Let's say I'm an insurance agency, right? And I'm 65 years old and I really struggle with Facebook. I don't even have an Instagram. I don't even have a TikTok. Then I probably wouldn't put myself in charge of social media, right? I would either go get an intern at a local college. I would hire somebody in marketing or do something that has some type of idea of content creation, because content creation is important, but at the same time, I think what you can do is follow your competition. We live in a copycat world, and a lot of industries are copycat, right? Real estate, insurance, housing, everything is copycat. So go look at what your competition is posting. If there's a competitor, let's say a landscaping business, right? I own a landscaping business. We're smaller than the competition, but I really want to go after some of his clientele or go after strategic partnership or whatever. I'm going to go to his social media and I'm going to go and look at what they do or maybe what they don't do, right? How are they targeting new clients? What's their branding look like? What's their post? What's their post frequency? There's a lot of things that go into it. And if they're putting out really great content, there's no saying you can't take some of it, right? Now, I'm not saying copy it exactly, but you can get content creation ideas from people inside your marketplace and even maybe people outside your marketplace. Like, real estate, for example, we're always looking for new marketing trends. We're always looking for new fonts, new logos, all this stuff. And there's a lot of real estate agents around the country, right? There's 1.3 million people, right? And we always look at the top 1%. What are they doing online that makes them unique? How did they get there? And you'll be shocked what you can find in content creation just by looking at other people's stuff. So I would probably say start there, which is really important. I think that would be a great way to start is, number one, launch the channels on Facebook, Instagram, probably a TikTok if you're a customer service industry, definitely a LinkedIn, and really put somebody in charge of it who understands it and can do the content creation, but also somebody who's going to understand your industry. Because understanding your industry is almost just as important as understanding your clientele. Because if I'm let's say that my social media person for our brokerage has no idea about real estate, then how are they going to know what's important whenever a house sells in 5 days versus 100 days? How are they going to know what pictures to put up compared to other photos? So you have to have some type of knowledge of what you're looking for and what your clients are doing as well. Any specific platforms you would start with? Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I would do a Facebook business page. I would do a Google business page for sure, because then people will start to find you on obviously Google and Apple Maps. And I would get a bunch of photos and videos done either of your office or of your product or whatever it could be. Upload those to Google because that will obviously help with SEO and people finding you. And then I would start to send that Google page to your clients for them to send you Google reviews. And you can even create some type of rewards program, or hey, if you review us, you get entered into a raffle for a $25 Starbucks gift card. Or maybe you can create little QR codes and you can ship them, you can mail them out to all of your clients and say, hey, if you can scan this QR code and leave us a review, we'll buy you coffee on us or whatever it could be, right? But the whole point is you want to drive people back to where people are finding you, which is usually Google, Facebook business. Obviously, I would have an Instagram just because it's a great thing to have today. And you can run Facebook and Instagram directly from the Meta suite inside of Meta. It's a great way to do that. And I think if you're a customer service person or if you're a product person, like you're selling t-shirts, hats, apparel, something like that, I would definitely have a TikTok just because it's so frequently used now, really in all demographics. It's not just younger kids. It's almost every demographic now, especially with TikTok Shop and all that good stuff. So I think that would be the platforms, and I would always have a LinkedIn too, because LinkedIn is more professional, and that way you're still having yourself build the brand and all of those. So I would use all those in unison if you can. And like I said, content creation is important. Yes, it can be a full-time job, but there's a lot of it you can do on your own that is it does save some time, let's say. Mount Washington, Ohio, thank you so much for tapping in. I appreciate that. Want to go back into some of the other questions that were sent in. These have been great so far, guys. Thank you so much for writing in your questions and continue to write those in. What's one strategy that consistently drives growth in any business? And I think it's two things: sales and great leadership. Because obviously sales are always going to drive growth, right? I don't care. We talked about this at length on this live stream before. I don't care what industry you're in. You, at some point in time, are always going to be selling something. Every single one of us is selling something to somebody else every single day. We may just not notice it or realize it. So if you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, whatever else, you have to be the main sales train. You have to understand what it's like to sell, who's your clientele, so on and so forth. And that's always going to drive growth, because the more you're selling, hypothetically, the more you're making, right? And the more you're making, the more opportunity you have to expand to new markets, open new locations, bring more resources on, whatever it could be. And number two for me is great leadership, because great leadership will drive growth inside the company, because hopefully they're energizing the team around them for them to continue to elevate their level. And I can tell you one thing that absolutely does not drive growth is bad leadership, right? Because I don't care if you have the greatest sales team, the greatest technology, the greatest whatever, if you have somebody, a bad leader in there who's pushing all this top talent away, or making people feel uncomfortable, or treating the customers bad, or whatever else, nothing, and I mean nothing, will derail growth more than that. So if you're a business owner and you're looking to scale, focus on sales and great leadership, because that is really what's going to drive everything that you're going to need to grow to whatever you want to accomplish in the next level, or whatever else from there. But I want to get to another question really quick before we get back in the chat. How important is discipline compared to motivation? And I thought this was a really good one that came in, because for me, I think they go hand in hand, but discipline is what leads to motivation, which I think is really important, because we can all be motivated, right? Hey, I'm motivated to go get off the couch today and go work out. I'm motivated not to eat that pizza today. I'm motivated not to go to the Cheesecake Factory and not get the cheesecake. Those are all motivations, right? But are we disciplined enough to not go and get the cheesecake? Are we disciplined enough to go to the gym whenever we don't really want to? Are we disciplined enough to get up early in the morning because we know that's the only time we have to work out that day? That is what is important. And the exact same thing in business, because are we disciplined enough to make sure that the mission we're on aligns with our vision, our focus, our work ethic, our everything that we want to do, right? Everything stems from discipline. Motivation stems from discipline. Success stems from discipline. So I don't know one successful person, and I've met quite a few, but I don't know one who is successful with absolutely no discipline. You can't have it. And so for me, I wanted to get to this question because it's imperative. Everybody always tells me how motivated they are. Everybody always tells me how focused they are. Everybody always tells me, Corey, I want to be successful. It's like, do you? Are you disciplined enough to truly be successful? Are you disciplined enough to go and really make those sacrifices so that you can have those successes, right? So it's a really good question I want to get to tonight. Let's get back in the chat. How do your personal beliefs or values influence the way you lead, especially under pressure? Well, I mean, I think for me, the way that I've always led is from, somebody who I always want my team to know that I care about them, right? I very, very important to me. And because, those are my beliefs and values, is I want to treat others how I want to be treated, right? So I want them to know that I care about them. I want them to know that they matter to me. I want them to know that I'm listening to them and I'm understanding what they're trying to say to me. But also I'm trying to understand how we can incorporate what I'm maybe trying to teach them, that we can align and use it as a coaching avenue there, essentially. But I think that all kind of goes back into your personal beliefs and values, because, I always, I've told you guys before, we recruit culture first at our firm. I want really good people who want to work with other really good people who want to sell real estate. Sounds elementary, but it's very difficult to find. If I opened a landscaping business, or if I opened an insurance agency, or if I opened whatever, or if I worked in a C-suite of a great organization, I would want the same thing. I would want great culture from great people. And that is what your beliefs are. That is what culture is built off your values and how you treat others, how you see yourself, how you see the customer, so on and so forth. So I think you have to really go into the understanding that I am going to recruit talent around me based off people that I want to work with and that want to work with me. And we are going to go get clientele that fit and align our vision and goals and values that we want to put out into the world. And I think that's really important. Great question, though. Can you share a moment when your faith or core convictions help guide a difficult decision? Yeah, actually, it's a good one because it actually just happened. So obviously, you guys know I'm really getting into my faith. I'm really trying to live a God-first life. And for me, forgiveness has been something that has been really on my mind and really trying to bring it into my life. I'm really trying to be at the forefront of forgiveness because, God forgave us. So why are we not forgiving others, right? No matter what they've done to us, no matter anything. And we had a couple agents who have been here for almost 8 years leave recently. And, I could have handled it terribly. I could have made an example out of them. I could have lost their emails and did all these other things, right? But at the core of it, what does that solve? That does nothing for me, right? Now, I can be sad that they've left. I could be upset in my own way or form, whatever else. But at the end of the day, they're going to go and do what they want to do, right? They're going to go and seek an opportunity that they believe is best for them. And I have to forgive them for that because holding a grudge or holding anger in my heart for them would do absolutely nothing for me, nothing, but other than just make me miserable. So it's been a great thing that I've really enjoyed leaning into my faith the last 3+ months. And I really feel God is really coming into my life and really focusing on and living an inside out life and, really treating others how he treats us. And one of the biggest things we talk about is forgiveness, right? And I can promise you, I don't know if I would have reacted the same way 3 months ago or 5 months ago or 6 months ago, just to kind of how the situation was handled, the fallout of the situation, a couple different things here and there. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people do to us. All that matters is what we do to them and how we react to them and how we treat them. And so that's a good example for you guys from there. What if you know nothing about success and you struggle coming up with questions for your friend to read? How would you handle that? And does your friend have any success being successful? I would say there's a lot of websites out there like ChatGPT, AI, whatever else that you could probably figure out some questions for you. But your friend, I'm sure, values you even watching and submitting questions, and I'm sure that he really appreciates you taking time to be here. So thank you for that, and obviously thank you for all the support. Not everybody has the right questions. No big deal. If you don't actually want to know the answer to them, it's also okay. We have about 10 minutes left here. I want to get to a couple more here that were brought in. What role does failure play in success? I wanted to get to this one because for me, it's a huge one. Failure will either do two things to you. It'll make you stop because you think to yourself, I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I can't go out and do what I want to do. And it'll create this very negative attention, very negative kind of outlook on your look on just life, but also business and all these things. Or it can do a great thing to you, right? It can teach you what never to do again and what you should have done differently. And this is where most successful people that I know have all failed in life at something, either personal, either a previous business, but they would never trade those shortfalls for anything because it's got to them to where they are today. And I think even myself, there's been a lot of times I failed. There's been a lot of times, I either failed where I brought somebody on who didn't fit the culture, had to adjust. Maybe I lost out on a listing when I was selling, or maybe I lost out on a buyer, or maybe I lost an agent or whatever. all of us fail every single day. It's how we react to it, and it's how we understand what we're going to learn from it so that we never make those hopefully decisions again. Now, if you're somebody who thinks you're going to go through business and never fail, I'm sorry to tell you, you have a long road ahead, because you absolutely will. One way, shape, or form, you are going to fail in something. And it's just a matter of how you can overcome it and how you can focus on what you should have done differently to lead hopefully into the building success on the next one. So it's a really good question, and I think it's important, because I think people are mostly afraid of failure. That's why they're either working a job they don't like, they don't want to take the risk of opening that business or whatever else. And I think for me, you have to put that on the wayside. You can't be afraid of failure, because at the flip side, what if everything goes perfect? What if everything goes awesome? What if everything is bigger and better than you ever imagined? And I'm a big believer in that, because it happened to me. Whenever I opened our brokerage firm, I gave myself 3 years. I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not. I'm going to give it 3 years to see if it works. Well, I've told this story before, that I wanted to get to 300 million as fast as possible in production within our firm. I gave myself 3 years to be able to do that, because that's the number I kind of thought for us to be successful, right, in our marketplace. Well, we did it in about 14 months, right? And it was better than I ever imagined. And it was better than I ever thought it could go. And here we are almost 9 years later, sitting here talking to you guys in a live stream, talking about success and all these things. 9 years ago, I would have never thought any of this was possible. So I'm a believer that everything can go better than you think it can, because I've lived it. It's happened to me. And so you cannot be afraid of failure. Failure, you can always adjust. You can always pivot. You can always go back to doing something you could always do. But there's very few opportunities in life that you get ahead of you that you should be like, yes, I got to take that one, and that's a great one. So I hope that answers your question. And there was also a one question I want to end with. This has been great, and we talked about it just a few minutes ago, obviously with my faith. But this is from my buddy Jerome on Instagram. I heard you speak about your faith a lot lately. Can you please lean into tonight and tell us how important that is to you, but how it's also impacted you? Yeah. So if you guys follow me on social media, obviously, I have been leaning into my faith. I've been a little bit more vocal than I probably ever have been before when it comes to what I'm truly trying to live, what I'm truly trying to believe in. And it's because for me, I really believe that I want to live a God-first life. God has two paths for us, a narrow path or a broad path. And the narrow path is the life that he wants us to live, walking and trusting with him. And so I've been going through a lot over the last, 6 months, 8 months, through all this personal and business and doing all these things. And I really lately have just been putting all the control and all the trust in God. God, if it's your will, it'll be. God, if it's your will that I'm going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, then it'll be. And really believing and trusting in that. And I've always been somebody who has sought fulfillment through other things or accolades or whatever else. But deep down, it did nothing for me. And so the last several months, I've been really trying to make really drastic changes in my life, but really leaning into my faith and walking that God-first life. And for me, it's been amazing. I feel God in my life changing me and doing different things and opening new opportunities and answering unanswered prayers and doing all this stuff in my life. And it's exciting, and I love it. And so I'm going to continue it. But for me, it's really impacted me. And, and I don't do it on social media. I don't do it on here for attention or this, and that. I do it to just try to change or try to influence one more person. I go to 1122 here in Jacksonville, and our pastor always says we're a church of one more, that one more person. And so if I can be an influence or a faith, or somebody can look to me and say, I look up to this person, so he's being vocal, so I need to lean into mine. Or same exact time, you never know what somebody else is going through in those moments and who's going to be watching you or looking to this or whatever. So if I can just be a beacon of that for God and, what we're going through, and obviously the hard times that you're struggling with or whatever, then I want to do that, and I want to continue to lean into that. And that's been really important for me as we have navigated these last several months. But really especially since the first of the year, and really just in all things, not only just my personal life, but in business as well. We've gone through so much over the last 4 to 5 months with the transition over to Christie's and changing this and changing that and this person leaving and doing all these things. And we've had great successes from people coming on board and all of this. And what I always tell is, what I always pray is, God, whatever your will is, let's be, and whatever your best, whatever my best is, I know you're going to provide for me. And so it's important. And so this is not a faith show or anything like that, but at the same time, I am, very leaning into my faith. And so I did appreciate that question from there, from Instagram, and making sure that we're here. So thank you guys so much for obviously being on this stream. We will be back not next week, the following week, in March. I think that's whatever the date is. I'll make sure that everybody gets it all. But we will make sure that everybody has everything. Continue to support. If you are new here, once again, please subscribe to the channel. We absolutely love having you. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this live stream. We are going to make it bi-weekly here coming up, just so we don't dilute anything and whatever else, to make sure that the questions aren't repetitive. But thank you guys so much for being here tonight. And as